Doug Collins is from the beautiful state of Georgia, joins me right now. Congressman, thanks for coming. Good to see you.
It's good to be here with you.
What do you make of these polls, including one in the Wall Street Journal today that shows the majority still aren't buying those tax cuts, still not feeling that they're the elixir?
Well, I think part of the issue is there's been a lot of mixed press on it, Neil. And I think when you have the Democrats going out there talking about it being crumbs and trying to downplay it because they know it's not in their best interest for the election process. But then when you have the process also having this last year of having to file the old way, they're still seeing some of what they've had to deal with, and they're understanding that why we've had the best workers, the best economy, the best innovation, everything here in the U.S., but yet we had the worst tax system. Well, we got one more day today to finish that out so that by next year we'll see this coming in. We've just got to tell the story to say, hang on, this is the end. We're looking forward to next year.
You know, Congressman, there are different studies out. One that has it that a third of Americans have actually seen it in their paycheck, even though statistically we're told 2/3 have. So if half that many are seeing it or believing it, how do you get the word out that more are benefiting?
Well, I think it's when you take the person, all polls are really a snapshot in time. They take a moment in time and say, this is the way I feel. But what we're finding is when I travel around, I travel across the country, is when you start seeing companies like in my district, Mincy Marble, when you start seeing other companies, larger companies, where you make it personal to their employees and they're seeing the expansion, they're seeing new money come in, they're seeing their checks a little bit larger, it may be taken up in some other things, or benefits being added. That's when you personalize this. And I think for Republicans especially, we've got to personalize these stories and say, this is how the economy grows. When we do that, we win.
Are you surprised, though, that isn't resonating? And just today we got news that yet another prominent Republican, your counterpart from Pennsylvania, Congressman Dent, is leaving much earlier than expected in just a few weeks, as a matter of fact, as they redistrict things there. That's 40 Republicans now who are leaving, led by the Speaker, who's not opting to run for re-election. What do they see? What are they worried about?
I think many of them have to take each of them individually. You have some who are term limited out as chairman, and they've been here a little while, so they're wanting to go home. This is also part of an American experience. Everybody talks about term limits. They talk about turnover. Well, since 2010, we've had well over 50% turnover here. I think that's a good thing. Some of these have different reasons for going.
You don't think they're getting out of Dodge before the heat?
Well, if they are, they're going to miss the cherry on top when we actually see.
You've heard about the blue wave and everything else, despite the tax that they're not resonating, that Americans have had it, that fiscal stewardship is such that Republicans haven't held to their credo of watching spending. It's out of control. I know you've been a critic of that as well.
Yeah.
Are you worried that there's going to be a big old blue wave and you could get swamped?
No, I think the blue wave crumbled in 2016. If you remember about this time, if we were in October of 2016, we'd be talking about Hillary Clinton as president.
Very true.
So when we look at this, Donald Trump overcame all of that. And I think what we're going to look at is when we've looked at this, and people talk about this all the time. I hear it from people on TV and everything that says there's not a difference. We have the deaths. Let me ask you this. If Democrats were in control, would we have had this tax cut? No. If Democrats were in control, would we have had the rollback of regulatory burden that's coming from Washington, D.C.? Would we have had a military bending that has now built back up our military where they can do what they need to do? Would you have the emphasis of the economy and jobs and companies saying we want to build in America, we want to bring that? If you'd have had that under the Democrats, no. The answer is no. So when you talk about the differences, you have to be honest with the differences. We may all not want to get to a certain end, and I may want to see the deficits lower, which I do. I want to see spending lower, which I do. But I'm going to be like Ronald Reagan. I'm going to take the 80% I get right now, and I'll come back and get the 20% later.
You mentioned Ronald Reagan. I'm wondering that some of your colleagues with whom I chatted sort of said the president's the reason they're not doing better, that he is on the ballot as much as you guys are.
Well, I think we're always on the ballot, but this president has a lot to look at. This president can look back over an economy that is growing. He could look back over an economy.
So without him, you'd be worse off right now?
I think our base was energized. Let's go back to what brought this president in. And we may disagree on some things and disagree on how things go about it, but he brought people to the table who had been disenfranchised. Go back to that election again. If they want to remind us of an election coming forward, I want to remind them of an election then when they had everything going for them, and this president went to people and said, are you better off? Don't you believe the government ought to fight for you? He hit a resonant tone that when we go out and we talk, and I go to the Waffle House or I go to the grocery store and I see people, the number one thing they say to me is support the president and y'all get it together in D.C. When we make the message personal, that is when local, that's when we can begin to understand what is benefited from up here. And also the fact that we're trying to move away from D.C. and get to the people where they can do the jobs and do those hopes, dreams, and ideas that they've always wanted to do.
There's talk, by the way, that the president is going to make some inroads with the Chinese on this trade situation. I know you've been concerned that this erupts into a trade war. You think one can still be avoided?
I think so. And I think this is, again, if you understand the president, which he's done such, negotiation, he always starts out at a position saying, here's where I want to be. and then he begins the negotiation process. I think that's a good way to look at it. I'm from an agricultural district. There's always concerns. In my area, chicken is always the first one to get hit, and we're the poultry capital of the world. But when we look at it long term, are we going to be able to make long-term differences? We've already seen the Chinese officials say, okay, maybe we need to look at this. They understand, China understands, and I've been there, they understand as they move into a world leader that they want to be, they also have to be more of a world player. And if you're just simply going to take your own role, they're not going to be able to be there.
Congressman Collins, thank you very, very much. Good to
Well,
see you in the
such a pleasure.
flesh.
Oh, I was glad to see you.
All right, thank you very much, sir.